What is good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MKL Pugilism Boxing channel, where we talk all things box. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, put it on all so you get notified of all latest content as and when it drops on the channel. So let's get into this one. So last night we had Teofimo Lopez defending his super lightweight belt, WBO championship, against Jamaine Ortiz. And this was one of those fights where I want to say it definitely was controversial in terms of the result, but I'm just going to talk you through a bit of my thoughts on this fight and how it all went. So to begin with, we saw Ortiz come out in the southpaw stance. He made sure, and he pretty much stayed in the southpaw stance throughout this fight. He used that, and that was very effective against Teofimo Lopez. And throughout this fight, having watched it this morning, the thing I noticed was that Teofimo Lopez was simply following Jamaine Ortiz around the ring. He wasn't doing what you should do against a mover, a guy that's going to be all around the ring, using the entire ring and try to pot shot and trying to box you. A guy like that, you need to cut off the ring. It's necessity. It's a must. You have to cut the ring off. Otherwise, if you don't, then that guy's going to be moving around all night, and you're not going to be able to catch him. You're not going to. You have to trap him. You have to cut off the ring, and all Teofimo Lopez was doing was following Jamaine Ortiz around the ring. So it was unable to cut the ring off, and for me that was a massive problem. And even when he was going after Ortiz, it was all single shots. It was all, trying to land power shots. There was nothing really there to set up his shots. It was all following him, following him, following him. Ortiz moving around, doing his work on the move. And then Lopez trying to just catch him with one single power shot. And it just wasn't working. It wasn't working at all. For me, throughout this fight, I would say that Teofimo Lopez, he was indeed the aggressor. This was in Las Vegas, so I suppose they liked the aggressor. They liked the guy that's coming forward. But for me, his aggression wasn't enough, as he was coming in, but coming in with his hands down. And as he was making his way in against Ortiz, he was having to take sharp counters on the way in. So Ortiz was able to be very effective with him on the way in. So it's not like he was coming in aggressively and then he was landing shots and his work was better. No, he was coming in, and as he was trying to get in, he was having to take the sharp counters and take shots on the way in, as Jamaine Ortiz kind of timed him. So for me, the aggression of Lopez was not effective. It was not good enough to really be winning the majority of the rounds. And not only that, he's taking the counters on the way in, but because he's not cutting the ring off, Ortiz was always able to escape without having any issues escaping. So as Lopez comes in with his fancy lateral movement and no jab or anything like that, he's just coming in and trying to land the shots, and then he's having to take counters off of Ortiz. And as he tries to go after him, then Ortiz escapes to either the right or the left. And, he didn't cut the ring off. And it was just one of them where it's like, yeah, you're being aggressive. Yeah, you're coming forward. But you're just not able to cut this man off. The guy you're going after is still able to move around the ring, still able to land his counters, even as aggressive as you are. So that's something I noticed. And in this fight, as you watch it, Teofimo Lopez, the big problem, he just couldn't get into any sort of rhythm. He just couldn't get any real foothold on the fight. And that was all because of Ortiz's tactics. Must have learned from Sandor Martin, as he really wouldn't really engage with Lopez, and he wouldn't also come forward and try and take the fight to Teofimo Lopez, because Lopez is one of those guys that, if you know him, if you see him fight, he's a pure counter puncher who he works best against aggressive opponents. He likes you to come to him, and he likes you to kind of make the first move. When he's got to make the first move, when he's got to make the fight happen and make the action happen, and when he's got to come and get you, that's when he falls into problems. That's when he has issues, and that's why he had issues against Sandor Martin and pure boxers like that, and that's why he had big issues here against Jamaine Ortiz, because Lopez is one of those fighters that he's a counterpuncher, and counterpunchers, by definition, guys like Tank Davis, similar, different style of counter, but it's the same thing where they need you to come to them. They don't like to go and get you. They don't like to have to make the fight and press the action. What they like is to sit back and then draw you onto their shots and counter you nicely. But that's exactly why he had all these problems and had this nightmare of a fight with Ortiz, because Ortiz wouldn't do it. He wouldn't engage with him. He wouldn't come and get him. There was one moment, one of the, I think it may have been round 5 or 6, where Lopez, just stood back, went back towards the ropes and called Ortiz to come, and Ortiz did come and he landed a few shots. He done quite well on Lopez in that corner. So yeah, and this was a fight where it was quite boring for the crowd. They booed several times throughout this fight, as there really wasn't much action. Although I thought Ortiz won most of the rounds, he was winning it with these little bursts of punches, these little clear shots, 1, 2, 3, and then that was it. And then he'd move on and work his way around the ring and make Lopez miss a lot of the time. So it was one in these little bursts of punches. It wasn't like loads of action. So I think Lopez, he had a few good moments towards the end of the fight, towards the latter part of the fight. But for the majority of the rounds, he was just chasing Ortiz around, getting caught, getting countered. And Ortiz's style of the movement, using the ring, the fact that he wasn't being cut off, the fact that he didn't have much problem landing on Lopez, very effective counter punching, and Lopez just wasn't effective on the front foot. He was coming but it just ineffective because he just kept getting caught and he just kept allowing Ortiz to escape all the time. So, and for me, one of the key things that with boxing is the first punch you learn is always is the jab. And one of the punches I learned as a kid when learn how to box is you learn that jab, you learn that double jab, and you sort of step in with your jab and then step in again. And I think Teofimo Lopez, one of his biggest and the key mistakes that he made in his fight was that he didn't really have a jab in this fight. He was just sort of having the audacity to just walk forward and just walk forward and expecting to land something. Whereas I think if he actually invested time and actually threw a good effective jab, even if it was a throwaway jab and then a hard jab after it, he needed to, in order to, for, at least in my view, to stand a good chance of winning this fight, to show the judge to win the fight, he needed to jab his way in and, throw a hard, effective jab, throw a double jab, and set up his attacks behind the jab. But what he was doing, just walking in and trying to be aggressive. But I think that was one of his big key mistakes to why I felt he lost this fight. And, the fact that there was a lack of a jab from Teofimo Lopez meant that, he was playing into Ortiz's hand very significantly. And, overall, it was a very low volume fight. In the end, they gave the decision to Teofimo Lopez and they gave it unanimously. 2 judges had it by, I think it was 2 rounds each to Teofimo Lopez. And then the other judge had it wider by about, I think it was by about 5, 6 rounds to Teofimo Lopez. So it was unanimous. For me, I think that was the wrong decision. Because that shows that perhaps what they're doing, they're just scoring for aggression. But in my view, and the view of a lot of people who watched it, Teofimo Lopez was on the front foot. He was aggressive, but he just didn't land enough punches. His aggression was not effective. And, there were just too many mistakes in there. For me, as I said previously, he played into Jamaine Ortiz's hands, and Jamaine Ortiz was by far the more effective man in that ring. By far the more effective man. You could tell his game plan was working. He was effective in, tactically and in every way, shape and form. So why he lost this fight, I really don't understand, because there was nothing really spectacular or great that Teofimo Lopez done, or there was no sort of standout rounds that he had where it was like, wow, this guy's really doing something. It was always pretty much, Jamaine Ortiz having his own way, moving around the ring and dominating the fight from the outside. That's what I felt. So anyway, he wins. So congrats to Teofimo Lopez. I think it's the wrong winner, but a lot of the time we get this sort of stuff in boxing where they just score for aggression or whatever. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on this right in the comment section below. Did you think he's the right winner, or did you think Jamaine Ortiz? And until next time, it's MKO Pugilism, over and out.